In revealing the nature of self-realization, Sri Bhagavan has called such Sahaja. The term means natural or the innate. He has spoken of Sahaja Samadhi, absorption in the innate, the absorption in that which is natural. And he, as well as other great sages, have spoken of Sahaja Sthiti, abidance as the innate, or the natural abidance. What is innate or truly natural has no coming or going. If something is innate, it is one with your being, inseparable from your own nature. And absorption in that which is inseparable from your own nature must then be something without beginning and without end, without a coming to you or a going away from you. So what kind of absorption is this? If we are absorbed in something else, we may then come forth from that something else again. But if there is absorption in the innate, there is no coming and no going. Therefore, in your quest for self-realization, you inquire to know the very nature of your being. And we should not wait for something to happen to us, for what happens to us is not the innate. What happens to us is just an appearance. And appearance, which is subject to disappearance, of course, is ultimately unreal. What appears and disappears is the assumption of individuality, or the I notion, and all that is appended to it. That appears and disappears, and that is truly unreal. When the unreal is known as unreal, it ceases to be experienced. And there is absorption in the innate. This is not an absorption or samadhi of one thing into another. Rather, it is yourself in yourself, remaining as yourself. Regard only that which is innate as your identity. What comes, goes, and cannot be part of you. The body comes and goes, it cannot be you. The mind comes and goes, it cannot be you. Every perception comes and goes. Every conception comes and goes. None of this can be you. The assumed experiencer and all that he experiences comes and goes. This cannot be you. What is it in you that is neither obtained nor lost? To know that, and to know that as yourself, is to abide in the innate, Sahaja. Examine your own perspective. If you think self-realization has not yet come, you must discover what is meant by the innate. If you're expecting it to come, still you must know what is meant by innate or natural. For this reason, the Maharshi said that to say, I have realized the self, or I have not realized the self, are both equally absurd. Because there is only one self, not two. And that self is the very substance of realization, being of the nature of illimitable, unformed, unborn, being, consciousness, bliss. What is necessary is to abide in the knowledge of who you are. Similarly, if we say God is within, what is the within? This is what must be known. If you establish yourself in illusion only, as if you were an individual entity, that is, if you pretend or assume out of pure imagination that this is the case, then by inquiry, find out the root of this individuality. Where the false individuality or ego sense ceases, there is the samadhi that is sahaja, the absorption that is natural. Sometimes in describing this self-realization, Sri Ramana would say it is Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa in this sense means doubtless, or undifferentiated. Where the ego subsides, there are no doubts about what is real, about the self. Where the ego subsides, there is absolutely steady knowledge. How can the knowledge be absolutely steady? Because it is identical with being. It is the innate knowledge, not something that comes and goes. Do you see how the realization must always be of the nature of the self that is realized? Thus it is called truly non-dual. If it is of another nature, the knowledge will not be steady, and neither will the happiness and peace that one desires. Nirvikalpa may also be taken to mean undifferentiated. In truth, there is only undifferentiated existence, which is undifferentiated consciousness. With the delusive rise of the notion of I, division starts. If you examine your own experience in your own mind, you will see all the ideas of differences are based on the fundamental idea of I. Once there is I, there is difference. Difference between you and the universe, difference between you and God. Jagat Jiva Para. The world, the individual, the supreme. All seem differentiated. Where that notion of I, of a separate individuality as one's identity, where that notion is no more, there is no differentiation. Then what is realized and who realizes are identical. Such is the natural state, the innate. It is not a state of the body, it is not a state of the senses, it is not a state or condition of the prana, and it is not a state or condition of the mind. It is not anything experienced by anyone, but when the idea of anyone whatsoever is abandoned, this alone is found to exist. And this alone is truly direct experience. If you seek that by deep inquiry within yourself, which is innate, this absorption in the innate, the natural state, will be found to be yours. If you deeply inquire as to who am I, you are absorbed in that. You abide in that as that itself. If at any point this morning you have a question, please feel free to ask. Or if you wish to relate your own experience, please feel free to speak. Go ahead, Richard.
Meditating as you talk this morning, I thought is innate. Gets to within there is this being consciousness that's always there. When I was looking for innate, I was looking really for what was always there, because what is innate has to be met. In reading this week, I saw another metaphor, the metaphor of the confusion of identity, this metaphor of the crystal. And you want the crystal in front of the crystal dream. So it appears. And this seems like useful. And I'm going to get about still, what I want to see is to know real clearly that appearance of red in crystal isn't real. You know, I know mentally, certainly, that the crystal never becomes red. And in practice, kind of I'm starting to catch on a little bit that what is always there isn't touched by anything, and what is always there has to be who I am. Because being anything but that is just too preposterous, even more.
Your very nature is extremely clear, like a transparent crystal in the analogy. What colors do you imagine in it? If, as in the analogy, something that's completely clear because of proximity to something red, blue, etc., appears as if red or blue, etc. What in your experience are these colors? Your being is entirely clear, having no definition whatsoever. What colors do you superimpose on it?
To me, it's the color of the misidentification is the only color.
Yes, but that is correct. So what is the misidentification? With what do you confound yourself?
I still imagine some reality. Or it is not real. That has to be it. I don't know how to break the habit. Though you've told me many times. And it's obvious the direction.
Examine your own mind and observe what you mix up with yourself. If you go on examining, what is it that you mix yourself up with, guided by the knowledge of what you truly are? You will find your experience to be exceedingly clear.
crystal does not have any adjuncts.
Nothing sticks to it. What is added to it, in the analogy of the various colors, is so only by reflection or illusion. Nothing has happened to the substance of the crystal. Nothing has happened likewise to your being. It has not become anything else. It has not become embodied. It has not become something in the mind. It has not become something caught up in waking, dreaming, deep sleep, in such states.
It's funny that you hear that stuff. It's clearer and clearer as I've spoken up here that whatever is my identity, it is only singular. And there's never been anything but that singular identity. And yet, the confusion that occurs when looking outside in imagination makes it seem like many. But inside, within, the many is also absurd.
So the looking outward and the imagination of multiplicity are actually one and the same thing.
True. Yes.
Go on discriminating, comparing and contrasting what your actual experience is in contrast to the imagined diversity. And every time you see some aspect of ignorance as absurd, it is no longer yours.
Looking at what's steady. Well, what's steady is my nature is steady. And the way I would describe that nature is well, the closest it would get to it is bliss. And sometimes it's very direct. So direct that there's nothing else other than that. Other times it seems like there is someone experiencing that, and it has a quality of two to it. It's subtle. But it's almost one that's slightly removed from it, kind of thinking about it, or musing about it, or figuring it out, or doing something with it. And if I look at what's happening when that duality is there, it's when I don't look at it, that's when it's there. When I stop looking at what my nature is.
What do you want?
Well, if I look, I've already got it.
Are there alternative states for you?
There appears to be.
So then what do you want?
I don't want to change states.
A change of state occurs based on what seed? What starts the change of state?
Well, this may be a little down the road, but it's that somebody is not in that state anymore.
What makes up the somebody?
Well, it's like I make up to somebody. It's a,
All right. What goes into that I? This is what you should discern. Whatever goes into that I makes up the I, becomes the somebody. And the moment there is somebody, bliss, being, consciousness, and such, seem as if removed from you. Then they are viewed as objective, even though they, being consciousness, bliss, the reality, is non-objective. And the somebody, which is in the relative scheme of things objective, is taken to be the subject. So that which is the self is assumed to be not the self, and that which is not the self is assumed to be the self. So if we say, if I look, I have it, but if I don't look, I don't have it, is implied. We need to find out who that I is.
well, if I look at what it's made out of, it seems to only be made out of I. But it's a, that's the only part that's really real in it. Because if I look at, at the moment I can't see a whole lot more in it than that. If I look at what appears to be a second I, it's the same.
Same primary I.
It's the same I. It's not different. It's I'd have to make something else up that's not I, and it just goes away as soon as it.
And the maker is?
There's either no maker or it's I. When it's clearly I, there's no maker.
So it means the same.
If you examine it closely enough, it's inescapable.
So there's only you experiencing yourself at all times. Even ignorance is such. But if we know this, there's no more ignorance. The Sahaja is said to be the knowledge that is beyond ignorance and knowledge. Everything is absorbed, actually only is the single, undifferentiated being. This being is consciousness. The idea of states of consciousness is delusory. Just illusory, just completely false.
That's a great relief.
So if bliss appears to be reduced at any point, you have only to know what your being is. The tendency to develop an idea about being, or to treat being as if it were an objective state that you enter into and depart from, that you sometimes see and sometimes not, that tendency should be abandoned. In addition, as auxiliary support, whatever attributes that somebody whom we were speaking of a few moments ago, that somebody, whatever his attributes are, should be thoroughly examined. Whatever his tendencies are, should be destroyed. The same inquiry which determines what is real or who you are will accomplish that. If you can question the very validity of the basic assumption of I, and find the substrate of real being, certainly you can do so with every manifest tendency, all the forms, guises that I takes on.
This is a share in the same context of dialogue with Jim. As you were revealing the Sahaja state, a thought arose. I saw the thought arose, and it essentially was, wow, I have lived a long, long time in this, a very long time in this city of illusion. And in that arising, I could see, well, who is this I that's lived there that long? And that inquiry swiftly reveals the I's absence that's lived there very long. And instantly there's the true self for which, the true I for which there is neither liberation nor bondage. It happened that fast. It's a shift from imagination to abidance.
The reality, well, is always there.
Yes, it is.
So when you shift from illusion to real, you say it happens so quickly. Because it is already there.
It's already there. Yeah. Yeah. The movement that seems to enter into the idea that I, that seems to be almost instant in time. arising. The arising of the illusion seems to be the realm of time. Imagination seems to be in the realm of time.
Yes, and the time is also something that's imagined.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So it is not possible to say whether the I arises slowly or, gradually, or quickly and suddenly.
That's true.
Nor is it possible or even reasonable to say it disappears slowly or quickly.
Or I guess in the light of what I shared, I guess you can't even say I have been in illusion a long, long time.
No.
Or a short time.
Yes. We may say that to start with, and that deep recognition presses upon us the urgency of knowing the truth of the self, the reality. But a man who sees the illusion as an illusion, he's no longer in it. And he finds that he was never actually in it. It was an illusion,
Yeah.
after all. Otherwise, we'd say it was a reality. Within the context of time, we could describe it like this, that one moment in truth has more weight to it, has more substance than ages spent in an illusion.
Yeah.
Similarly, one drop of bliss is worth more than eons of suffering. One knowledge of liberation is worth far more than all the delusive notions of being bound. Of course, it's not really limited to a drop, to a moment, or any such thing.
Or seagulls.
Your explanation of the innate in us made it very clear what was this, what I didn't know before. It would come out of me sometimes, or I would know it to be within me, but didn't know what it was. And I suddenly, in order to make clear the differentiation, whatever isn't the innate is the theater of the absurd. So whenever I want to know which is what, becomes very clear. If it's not that, the innate, so is the theater of the absurd. And then it makes it clear to me, and I find peace because I know where I am at. Thank you. It was a very clear lecture for me. Thank you.
Jim was talking about consistency. There's been a quote by Gandhi for a long time that fascinating to me, which is the foolishness of consistency. something he has mentioned in his autobiography. And I've contemplated on that. It seems to me that the consistency is always there in the within. It's eternally consistent. When I start looking outside for consistency, as if I'll find it there, then the unsteadiness appears to, I can't find a foundation there of any kind of consistency. I think that's kind of what he was alluding to, looking externally for consistency in the dream.
To look for consistency or permanence in a world which is changeful by its very nature is an impossible task. That which is absolutely steady, perfectly consistent, is your own nature. Nothing else is your own nature. When there is consistency or repetition of mental tendencies, delusive conception, just because we have thought some way before, we go on thinking the same way. That's foolishness. If you consider what you regard in the context of I know, you will be able to perceive what you really know and what is just foolish repetition. I know it because I thought it before. If I thought it twice, 3 times, it's 2 or 3 times as strong, apparently. But that's trying to make something solid, which is intrinsically vaporous.
Like looking for security in some kind of outer form.
But what kind of security can we find in repeating thoughts or in outer changeable, transient form?
It's foolish.
It seems like that to look at kind of what keeps me bound, it helps to actually know where my freedom is. And the reason I say that is because if I'm looking from thinking that I'm a mind, and there's no way I'm going to be able to get it, step past the mind. Although I don't know if I necessarily believe that, because it seems like that whenever your intention is sincere, it seems like that's what really matters. But definitely, coming here, I felt like I was taking myself to be something grosser. And then during your discourse, it hit me, oh yeah, there is something way subtler. And then the kind of the meditation that we had a week ago Friday, where you described as the merger in being. I thought, oh yeah, that, that has to be the case. So as my kind of vision expanded, it seemed like my ability to absorb it also, or to go deeper also, kind of went along with it. But it's, I don't know, I keep hitting my head against the wall, boom, 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 come on, let's make it through these.
What is the wall and what is the head?
Well, The wall is, trying to approach that doesn't work. And the head is, holding on to these stupid ideas, thinking, whatever the string of patterns is, where it gets to happiness being external.
How do you hold? Obviously, if we can hold on to ideas, there'll be walls and long approaches, and there will be pseudo-bondage. But the bondage will feel real. So, how do you hold? Obviously not with your hands. You don't hold an idea.
Nor is it in the mind, because the mind...
The mind is the ideas.
Yeah, and it's just, what would be the space that would contain that? Who knows where the boundaries would be? It's not like the room,
right?
It's not like the world, not like the universe, or the galaxies. So it would be this idea of, me as existing somewhere, someplace.
Yes, but how do you hold that idea?
Oh, that one. Okay.
If that idea holds the others, then how do you hold that one?
Okay, I'm not sure. Because that one's kind of different, right? Because that's kind of an assumption that doesn't seem like it holds up very well.
Yes, it's almost like a thought with no form to it.
Well, it seems like the form is myself. Well, I mean, the form, I guess, in the sense that it's filling whatever the imagination is. So if I imagine it to be a body, it fills that. If I imagine it to be a mind, it fills that.
All right. But if you don't imagine it to be something, then it has no form of its own.
Yeah. But it has substance. Substance, not like a pillow.
What is the substance? If it's existence itself, where is the holding of the idea of I?
Yeah. Well, that's unfair. Because of its existence, then nothing can stand.
Well, does something exist other than existence? Now, I know that question can be reasonably answered by anyone, but inquire deeply. Is there something existing other than existence pure?
see that other. Now that seems to be important because that other is postulated in all of my illusion.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, the illusion is nothing but the conception of a second, of other.
Yeah, it seems like that whatever. So the meditation would be that if there is anything to pertain to the other, try to find out where it is.
Yes. How would other come to be? How would such imagination be held? By whom?
Seems like just movement of the mind assumes that, it's funny because if the mind moves.
The mind does not move. Is it a mind?
Yeah, it does not a mind at that point.
So the mind is like the wind. It's made up of air plus motion.
Okay. So it seems like, because it seems like there isn't a mind. However, if there's a movement, it seems like there's a movement in that mind. That self. There's a movement in.
How does the unmoving move? The motion and the mind are the same thing.
Yeah.
When we say the mind moves, where does it actually go? So how does the moving arise in the unmoving? If it arises, the unmoving remains as the substrate, the all-encompassing space, the illumination, and the only substance present, like the air with the wind.
So it's not other, it's the same.
However, deeply discerning the reality which can be comprehended only by itself, Where is the birth of motion?
In that same place. In other words, it couldn't be outside of it.
There is no outside for the infinite. There is no inside for the homogeneous.
इन्द्रियेभ्यः परा ह्यर्था अर्थेभ्यश्च परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिः बुद्धेरात्मा महान् परः.
The sense objects are higher than the senses, and the mind is higher than the sense objects. But the intellect is higher than the mind, and the great soul is higher than the intellect.
Mahata paramau vyaktam avyaktat purushah paraha purushanna param kinchit sakashtha sa paragatihi.
The unmanifested is higher than Mahat. Purusha is higher than the unmanifested. There is nothing higher than Purusha. He is the culmination. He is the highest goal.
Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudho atmana prakashate drishyate tvagraya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhihi.
He is hidden in all beings, and hence he does not appear as the self of all. But by the seers of subtle things, he is seen through a pointed and fine intellect.
Yachedvan manasi prajna tadyached jnana atmani jnanam atmani mahadidiyached tadyached chantam atmani.
The discriminating man should merge the organ of speech into the mind. He should merge that mind into the intelligent self. He should merge the intelligent self into the great soul. He should merge the great soul into the peaceful self.
Uttishtada jagrata prapya varani bodhata Kshurasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgam padastat kavayo vadanti.
Arise, awake, and learn by approaching the excellent ones. The wise ones describe that path to be as impassable as a razor's edge, which when sharpened is difficult to tread on.
अशब्दमस्पर्शमरूपमव्ययं तधारसं नित्यमगन्धवच्च यत् अनाद्यनन्तं महतः परं ध्रुवं निश्चायतन्मृत्युमुखात् प्रमुच्यते.
One becomes freed from the jaws of death by knowing that which is soundless, touchless, colorless, undiminishing, and also tasteless, eternal, odorless, without beginning and without end, distinct from Mahat and ever constant.
नाचिकेतम् उपाख्यानं मृत्युप्रोक्तं सनातनम् उक्त्वा श्रुत्वा च मेधावी ब्रह्मलोके महीयते.
Relating and hearing this eternal anecdote as received by Nachiketa and as told by death, the intelligent man becomes glorified in the region that is Brahman.